The colossal Nevarrian dreadnought emerged at the edge of the Suralan belt, its obsidian-colored hull absorbing what little sunlight reached the farthest edges of the solar system. Behind it, a fleet of smaller ships materialized from hyperspace, their arrival synchronized, creating a series of gravitational ripples that sent nearby asteroids veering off course. On the command deck of the flagship, High Commander Zarn surveyed the holographic map of the system before him. His long, claw-like fingers danced across the control panel, zooming in on the third planet orbiting the unremarkable yellow star. Scans confirmed the presence of an intelligent civilization on the inner planets, reported his second-in-command, Drell. Primitive structures in orbit and on several moons and planetoids. Zarn's multifaceted eyes narrowed, his lips pulling into a thin line. Threat assessment? Negligible. Drell replied with a dismissive flick of his hand. Their technology appears to be barely beyond the use of fossil fuels for propulsion. No energy signatures indicating advanced weapon systems. Zarn nodded, his crest of iridescent feathers rippling with satisfaction. Excellent. This system will serve us well. The Vorki will never suspect us hiding among such primitive life forms. The Nevarrian fleet began its advance toward the inner planets. Meanwhile, in the operations center of the Suralan Belt Deep Space Observatory, Lieutenant Commander Jackson Ridge's eyes widened as the incoming data flashed across his screen. This can't be right, he muttered under his breath, recalibrating the sensors. But the readings remained the same. A massive fleet of unknown origin had appeared from nowhere and was heading directly toward the inner planets. His hands flew across the holographic interface, activating the station's quantum communicator. Control, this is Suralan Station. Code Black, I repeat, Code Black. Multiple unknown vessels have entered the system. They are large, fast, and they're headed straight for us, back on Earth. Deep beneath the surface at the United Earth Defense Force, UEDF Command Center, General Lucas Kane received the transmission. His face remained stoic, though his eyes briefly betrayed a flicker of concern. Sound the alert, he ordered, his voice steady and commanding. I want all planetary defense grids online and the stealth fleet in position, and get me a secure line to the Galactic Council. We may need to call in our favors. As the UEDF sprang into action, the Nevarrian fleet reached Neptune's orbit. The massive gas giant's magnetic field had no effect on the alien ships, which sailed through the system, utilizing gravity manipulation to glide effortlessly past the planets and moons. On Triton, Neptune's largest moon, Dr. Isla Richards and her team of xenogeologists watched in awe as the Nevarrian fleet approached. Their research station, buried beneath Triton's icy surface, had been studying the outer solar system's extreme conditions for years. Now, they were on the front lines of a potential alien invasion. Are you seeing this, Isla? Dr. Maya Torres breathed, her eyes locked on the high-resolution feed from their orbital satellites. The alien vessels appeared to defy the very laws of physics. I'm recording everything, Dr. Richards replied grimly. If they turn hostile, Earth will need all the intel we can provide. As the Nevarrian fleet passed Neptune, they ignored the small human outpost on Triton, deeming it inconsequential, a primitive scientific station of little value. On the flagship, Drell reported, Exalted One, we've detected a minor structure on one of Neptune's moons. Should we eliminate it? Zarn waved a hand dismissively. Don't waste our resources. These primitives are no threat. Focus on finding a suitable hiding spot within this system. As the alien armada pressed forward, Earth's defenses went into high gear. At Armstrong Base on the Moon, Colonel Nathan Kane directed the activation of the hidden defense grid. I want every Phantom-class stealth fighter prepped and ready for launch, he barked, his voice echoing through the base's cavernous hangar. And make sure the stellar shield is at full power. If these aliens decide to investigate us, I want them to see nothing but a barren rock. Similar scenes unfolded across every human outpost. On Mars, Governor Elena Vargas activated emergency protocols, triggering the planet's network of underground cities and defense facilities. In the asteroid belt, Mining operations swiftly converted into military outposts, their equipment now repurposed for surveillance and defense. The Nevarrian fleet encountered its first sign that this solar system might not be as primitive as they had assumed when they reached Jupiter. A series of sleek, black satellites orbiting the gas giant vanished from their sensors. Zarn leaned forward, his curiosity piqued. It seems the humans have some rudimentary cloaking technology, he mused. No matter. It's still far too primitive to pose a real threat. What Zarn didn't know was that those disappearing satellites were transmitting real-time data on the Nevarrian fleet's composition, weapons, and energy signatures directly to UEDF headquarters on Earth. In the war room beneath Geneva, General Kane and his team analyzed the incoming data. Their technology is advanced, Kane noted, eyes scanning the holographic displays, but it's not unbeatable. We've dealt with worse during the Andromedan incursion. Admiral Alistair Walker, his second-in-command, nodded in agreement. Their arrogance will be their downfall. They clearly haven't detected our more advanced installations. We should strike now, while we have the element of surprise. Kane shook his head. Not yet. Let's see what they're after. If they're just passing through, we may avoid unnecessary conflict. But make no mistake, we'll be ready if they try anything. As the Nevarrian fleet entered the asteroid belt, they encountered their first significant obstacle. The dense field of rocky bodies created a navigational challenge even for their advanced vessels. Exalted One, Drell reported, our sensors are detecting unusual movements in the asteroid field. Some of the larger bodies are shifting out of their orbits. Zarn's eyes narrowed. Impossible. The primitives couldn't possibly have the technology to move objects of that size. He was wrong. Deep within the asteroid belt near Ceres, Chief Engineer Reinhold and his team were subtly altering the orbits of key asteroids using gravity manipulators, creating a shifting maze that the Nevarrian fleet would have to navigate. Keep it random, Holt instructed his team, fingers dancing across his control panel. We want them to think it's just natural turbulence in the field. The longer we delay them, the more time Earth has to prepare. As the Nevarrian fleet cautiously made its way through the asteroid belt, Earth's hidden preparations continued. On Venus, beneath the thick clouds of sulfuric acid, Dr. Nadia Ivanov and her team of scientists worked feverishly to analyze the Nevarrian fleet's gravitational data. This is revolutionary, Nadia exclaimed, eyes alight with scientific wonder. If we can reverse engineer their propulsion systems, we could make a quantum leap in our own technology. Her colleague, Dr. Amir Khan, looked up from his calculations. Assuming we survive this encounter, have you made any progress on the deflector shields? Nadia nodded, pulling up a complex diagram on her holographic screen. I think I've found a way to attune our shields to their weapons' frequencies. If I'm right, we'll be able to withstand their firepower long enough to strike back. Meanwhile, in the Jovian system, the Nevarrian fleet had found what they were looking for. The vast network of moons and magnetic fields around Jupiter provided perfect cover for their ships. We'll conceal the bulk of the fleet within Jupiter's rings, Zarn declared. The electromagnetic interference will mask our energy signatures. The Vorki will never find us here. As the Nevarrian ships moved into position, they remained oblivious to the network of stealth satellites and hidden bases scattered across Jupiter's moons. Human observers on Ganymede, Europa, and Callisto watched and waited, gathering critical intelligence on the invaders' every move. As the Nevarrian fleet settled into position within Jupiter's rings, Earth's defenses continued to brace for the inevitable clash. The alien ships, unaware of the human countermeasures in place, began their search for a suitable hiding spot within the system, unaware that their every move was being watched. On the surface of Earth, General Kane's command center was a flurry of activity. His officers meticulously monitored the alien fleet's movements, while the Strategic Council huddled around him. His face was grim as he examined the data from multiple sources, watching the Nevarrians make their way deeper into the system. They're moving through Jupiter's rings, Kane noted, tapping a holographic display showing the Nevarrian ship's path. They'll be at Saturn in a few days. Admiral Walker frowned, tapping his own console. "It's a risky move, Commander. They're taking a massive gamble, hiding in a place where their ship's energy signatures might be hidden. But if the Vorki get a whiff of them—" "Precisely," Kane interjected. "But we can't afford to underestimate them. If they're trying to lose us, we need to stay one step ahead. Keep monitoring their trajectory. No surprises." As the officers worked diligently, their thoughts were interrupted by a call from the Venus facility. "Dr. Ivanov," Kane said, answering the communication. "What have you got for us?" Nadia Ivanov's face appeared on the screen, her lab background visible behind her. "General, I think we've cracked it," she said, her voice filled with excitement. "We've managed to develop a prototype for a shield oscillator capable of amplifying our deflector shields against their weapon frequencies. We're testing it now, and initial results look promising. If this works, it'll give us the edge we need." "Great work, Dr. Ivanov," Kane replied. "Continue the testing. If it holds, we'll begin mass production. Keep me updated." Meanwhile, at the lunar base, Colonel Nathan Kane was overseeing the preparation of the Specter-class stealth fighters. The hangar was alive with activity as technicians scrambled to prepare the fighters for the possibility of an engagement. Kane stood by the console, his face tense, watching as each fighter was checked for readiness. "Colonel, the stellar shield is fully operational," his second-in-command, Captain Michael Reyes, reported. "We're ready for any eventuality." "Good," Kane said, still staring at the holographic map of the solar system. "If the Nevarrians decide to make a move, they'll find a much bigger challenge than they anticipated." Back in the asteroid belt, Rian Holt and his team continued their work to manipulate the asteroids, creating a shifting maze that would impede the Nevarrian fleet's progress. It had been hours since their last adjustment, and the constant, subtle shifts of the asteroids were starting to confuse the alien sensors. "It's working," Holt muttered, watching a new set of asteroid trajectories. "They're getting frustrated. We need to keep them on edge." His team was using every resource at their disposal, their gravity manipulators working in perfect harmony, each one nudging asteroids just enough to make the aliens doubt their course. They couldn't risk the Nevarrians figuring out that the disturbances weren't natural. "They're getting closer," one of Holt's engineers said, his voice tense. "If they hit the right asteroid, they could get through the maze and gain access to the inner system." "We can't let that happen," Holt said, determination in his voice. "Keep it going." Back on Earth, General Kane and his staff were deep into their preparations. The threat of the Nevarrian fleet hanging just beyond the outer planets was becoming more real by the minute. Kane was still hopeful that the aliens weren't looking for conflict, but every new movement made it clear that the invaders were biding their time, waiting for something. "I've got a bad feeling about this," Admiral Walker said, eyeing the holographic map that showed the alien fleet nearing the outskirts of Saturn. "They're too calm. They haven't made any hostile moves, but their proximity to the inner planets could be a strategic move. They might be planning something big." "I agree," Kane replied. "We're not dealing with just some random raid. These aliens know what they're doing. They're planning something, and we need to be ready when they do." As the alien fleet advanced towards Saturn, Zarn and Drell stood on the bridge of their flagship, analyzing the movements of the human defenses. "They've put up a decent show of force," Drell said, scanning the human defense satellites and stealth fighters surrounding Saturn. "I'd almost think they were expecting us." Zarn was deep in thought. "They've underestimated us, Drell. The primitives may have some interesting technology, but they won't be able to stop us. We need to secure a base of operations here and start deploying our ground forces." Drell hesitated, his antennae twitching. "Are you certain, Exalted One? The Vorki fleet could arrive at any moment. They will be expecting us to keep our profile low." "Do not question me," Zarn snapped, his iridescent feathers flaring. "We are the Nevarrians, and we will not hide in the shadows like the Vorki. We will show them that even the most primitive systems are no refuge from our might." As the Nevarrian fleet began to gather at the edge of Saturn's system, Earth's forces moved into position. with a human stealth fleet hidden among the rings of Saturn, their sensors trained on the alien ships. The stage was set for the showdown that could change the fate of the entire galaxy. Back on Triton, Dr. Richards and her team continued to monitor the Nevarrian fleet's movements, their research station sending crucial data to Earth. "We've got to keep these readings coming," Dr. Richards said, her voice strained. Every moment counts. The human forces were preparing for war, and although the Nevarrians had seen humans as insignificant, that perception was about to change forever. As the first shots of this galactic war loomed closer, it was clear that humanity was no longer just a spectator in the cosmic arena. It was a force to be reckoned with. The next move would determine everything. As the Nevarrian fleet loomed on the edges of Saturn's system, tensions across Earth's defense networks were reaching a boiling point. In every corner of the planet, military personnel and scientists alike were preparing for the worst, readying themselves for the inevitable conflict. No one could predict when the Nevarrians would make their move, but the growing sense of urgency was palpable. On the moon, Colonel Nathan Kane stood at the command center of Armstrong Base, eyes scanning the holographic map of Saturn's rings. He had anticipated a confrontation, but the Nevarrians had so far kept their movements measured, almost deliberate. It was as if they were waiting for something. "Colonel," Captain Reyes said, his voice breaking through Kane's thoughts. "The Spectres are ready for launch. We're tracking multiple ships coming out of the Nevarrian fleet, and they're headed straight for the inner system." Kane didn't flinch. "This is it," he said, his voice low but resolute. "Prepare the fighters for launch, and tell every base to be on high alert. The moment they make their move, we respond." Back at UEDF headquarters in Geneva, General Kane's team was already analyzing the movements of the Nevarrians as they began their subtle advance into the system. A series of coded transmissions came in from Mars, Venus, and the asteroid belt, all confirming that the Nevarrians had not made any aggressive moves yet. Still, Kane knew it was only a matter of time. "We can't afford to wait any longer," Admiral Walker said as he stood over the data screens. "We need to take the offensive." "We stay patient," Kane replied, eyes locked onto the holographic projection. "We need to know exactly what they're after before we engage. Let's keep them guessing. We'll strike only if they make the first move." On Venus, Dr. Nadia Ivanov and her team were making the final adjustments to the newly designed deflector shields. Their success was critical. If they could reinforce Earth's defense systems with this technology, it might give them the advantage they desperately needed. "Deflector shields are online, General," Nadia reported over the comms. "We've refined the oscillator's power settings. It should be able to withstand Nevarrian weapon fire for a significant amount of time. But, of course, the real test will be when they open fire." Kane's face was unreadable. "Understood, Dr. Ivanov. Keep the team on standby. If we need to deploy it, we'll be ready." The Nevarrian fleet continued to advance, their ships expertly navigating through the rings of Saturn. They were drawing closer to the inner planets, and the more human defense forces observed, the clearer it became that these invaders were not merely passing through. They had a purpose, a strategy, and it was directed right at Earth. On the bridge of the Nevarrian flagship, High Commander Zarn stood still, eyes focused on the holographic projection of the solar system. The human defenses were more intricate than he had expected, but still, he remained confident. "The primitive defenses will falter," Zarn said, his voice smooth but laced with arrogance. "The humans are far too arrogant in thinking they can defend their home. Their shield technology is rudimentary at best." Drell, his second-in-command, nodded cautiously. "Perhaps Exalted One, but we should still be cautious. The Vorki might arrive at any moment. We don't want to be exposed." Zarn's eyes narrowed, his feathers flaring in irritation. "I've made my decision, Drell. The Vorki will have to wait. We have a mission to complete, and I will not allow these primitive creatures to delay us any further." Meanwhile, in the asteroid belt, Rian Holt and his team were making their final adjustments to the gravity manipulators. They had successfully created a maze of asteroids that had delayed the Nevarrians, but the time was running short. Holt knew that once the alien fleet entered the inner system, There would be no more hiding. The full-scale battle for Earth would begin. "We've bought some time," Holt said, watching as more asteroids shifted into place. "But we need to hurry. Once they clear the belt, we're out of tricks." On Ganymede, the network of stealth satellites continued to track the Nevarrian movements in real time. Dr. Isla Richards and her team were doing everything they could to monitor the fleet's trajectory, but the unknowns were overwhelming. "They're heading straight for Jupiter's moons," Richards reported to Earth. "I can't tell what they're looking for, but we can't risk letting them find anything. If they discover our bases—" "Keep your focus," Dr. Richards, General Kane interrupted. "We've got it covered. Just keep feeding us data." Dr. Richards' face hardened. "Understood, General. We're tracking them now." Back on Earth, Governor Elena Vargas was overseeing the final preparations on Mars. The underground cities had been fortified and military personnel were on high alert. Mars, once a symbol of human ingenuity, was now a crucial defense point. They couldn't afford to lose it. "We're ready to deploy," Vargas said, her tone firm. "If the Nevarrians breach the outer defense perimeter, we'll give them a fight they won't forget." "Hold steady," came Kane's voice over the comms. "Wait for the signal. We don't want to act prematurely. Every second counts." As the Nevarrian fleet neared Jupiter, Zarn's flagship slid into the gas giant's magnetic field, using its interference to cloak their movements. The rest of the fleet followed suit, disappearing into the vast cloud of gas and moon surrounding Jupiter. "We are hidden," Zarn announced, his voice a low rumble. "Now we wait." He turned to Drell, a satisfied smirk crossing his features. "They think they're prepared, but their best defenses are no match for us." But as they prepared to move forward, they had no idea that the humans had already turned the tables. The stealth satellites monitoring their every move were feeding critical data back to Earth, and the UEDF had begun to deploy the first phase of their counterattack. Back on Earth, the time had come. General Kane's orders rang out, crisp and clear. "Deploy the Spectre fighters. Full engagement mode." The Nevarrians are about to learn just how far humanity has come. In the depths of Armstrong Base, Colonel Nathan Kane's voice was steady as he spoke into his comm, "Launch the fighters. Let's show them what happens when they underestimate humanity." Across the system, from the moon to Mars, from Venus to the asteroid belt, Earth's defenses were set into motion. The first wave of Specter-class stealth fighters launched, disappearing into the vastness of space. They were invisible, silent, and deadly. The stage was set for the first major battle of the Galactic War, a conflict that would reveal the true strength of humanity and determine whether Earth would be lost to the Nevarrians, or whether it would stand tall as the ultimate power in the solar system. As the Nevarrians prepared to strike, they had no idea they were already under attack. The first wave of Specter-class stealth fighters glided silently through the vast darkness of space, invisible to both the Nevarrian fleet and the untrained eye. Their cloaking technology had been perfected over months of secret development. To the enemy, they were ghosts, fleeting whispers in the cosmic wind. On the moon, Colonel Nathan Kane watched the holographic map of their launch trajectory with grim determination. The fleet of alien warships loomed just beyond Saturn's rings, still unaware of the silent assault about to unfold. "Spectres are on course, Colonel," Captain Reyes reported from the operations console, his voice calm but carrying the weight of the impending conflict. "They'll be in position within the hour." "Good," Kane replied, narrowing his eyes. "Get the next wave of fighters prepped. We're going to need everything we have when the real fight begins." Meanwhile, in orbit around Earth, the battle stations across the planet were fully armed. The Stellar Ward, a colossal array of energy shields surrounding Earth's atmosphere, was powered up to full capacity. Satellites were being repositioned. Earth's defenses were no longer just about containment. They were about survival. Back on Saturn, Zarn stood on the bridge of the flagship Javoran. The Nevarrian fleet now completely hidden within the gas giant's magnetic interference. He studied the holographic map of the solar system, his sharp eyes narrowing as he examined the human defensive grid. "They've made a mistake," Drell said, standing at his side. His antennae twitched in uneasy anticipation. "They think we're trapped in the ring system, but we have no intention of staying here." Zarn nodded slowly, his iridescent feathers rippling as he leaned forward, his claws clicking on the control panel. "We have no need to hide. Once we complete our sweep of the moons of Jupiter, we will move toward Earth. Let's see if these primitive beings can truly protect their home." "We should be cautious, Exalted One," Drell urged. "If they know we're coming, they might have countermeasures." Zarn turned to face him, a flicker of annoyance passing through his gaze. "No more waiting, Drell. We must strike. The Valari cannot be allowed to intercept us before we complete our mission. This system will be ours." Unknown to Zarn and his crew, the first wave of Spectres had already made their move. As they moved into position around Saturn's outer rings, their cloaking systems in full effect, they positioned themselves in a perfect ambush. Earth's forces weren't just preparing for an attack. They were already on the offensive. On Earth's surface, General Kane was pacing back and forth in the command center beneath Geneva. The weight of the situation pressed heavily on his shoulders. With each passing minute, the Nevarrians moved closer to Earth, and humanity's fate seemed to grow more uncertain. "Any word from the outer fleet?" Kane asked, his voice a mixture of calm and urgency. "Nothing yet, sir," Admiral Walker replied, eyes fixed on the screens. "The Spectre squadron is in position. We're waiting for confirmation of the Nevarrians' next move." The seconds stretched into what felt like hours as Kane waited, his heart pounding in his chest. The tension in the room was palpable. He knew that the first strike would set the tone for the entire conflict. Then, without warning, a communication came through from the outer system. "General Kane," Dr. Richards' voice crackled over the comms. "The Nevarrians are moving again. They're preparing to break free from the ring system. They've underestimated our sensors. They don't know we've detected their fleet." Kane's jaw clenched. "Activate the first strike. Initiate the full engagement protocol. We're going to show them that underestimating humanity was their biggest mistake." The order was instantaneous. In the darkness of space, the first volley of missiles launched from the Specter-class fighters, streaking through the void with blinding precision. Their stealth systems allowed them to remain undetected, delivering a brutal surprise to the Nevarrian fleet. Back on the Javoran, the attack hit hard and fast. Several Nevarrian ships, caught off guard, had no time to react before the explosions rocked their hulls. The shock waves sent ripples of electromagnetic interference through the fleet's communication systems, causing chaos on the bridge. "What in the stars?" Drell shouted, his antennae flaring as he frantically tried to regain control. "We're under attack." Zarn's expression shifted from one of arrogance to a cold, calculating fury. His wings flared, and his eyes darted across the control panels. "It's the humans," he hissed. "They've already discovered us. Activate countermeasures now." But the damage was already done. Specter-class fighters, with their unmatched agility and speed, maneuvered expertly around the Nevarrian vessels, continuing their assault. The human fighters were relentless, striking with pinpoint accuracy, leaving the alien ships scrambling to adjust. The battle was just beginning. On the Javoran, Zarn's voice boomed. "Prepare for full retaliation. We will not let these primitives dictate the course of this war." With that, the Nevarrians retaliated with their own devastating firepower. Energy beams lashed out at the Spectres, forcing the human ships to dodge and weave at breakneck speeds. Some of the Spectres were hit, their cloaking systems flickering as they sustained heavy damage, but they quickly recovered and fell back into formation. Meanwhile, at the UEDF Command Center, General Kane watched the unfolding battle with a stoic gaze. His hands were clasped behind his back as he analyzed the situation. The first wave was a success, but the Nevarrians weren't backing down. "We knew this wasn't going to be easy," Kane muttered to himself. "But we've made our point. It's time for Phase 2. The order was given. and the next phase of the counterattack launched into action. On Earth's surface, military installations came online and ground-based defense weapons powered up. Satellites deployed additional weapons platforms, creating a deadly web of defense across the solar system. But the real game-changer lay deeper in space. Back on Mars, Governor Elena Vargas was monitoring the battle closely. "Activate the Quantum Disruptors," she ordered. "We need to lock down their fleet's propulsion systems." The Quantum Disruptors were humanity's trump card, a last-ditch effort to disable the Nevarrian ships. When fired, they emitted a field that interfered with the alien ships' gravity-based propulsion, effectively immobilizing them. As the Spectres continued their relentless assault, the Quantum Disruptors fired in synchronized waves, targeting key Nevarrian vessels. One by one, the Nevarrian ships slowed, their propulsion systems sputtering and faltering under the strain of the quantum interference. "This is it," Kane said, his voice steady as he watched the Nevarrian fleet begin to fall into disarray. "Now they'll see that humanity will not kneel." But the Nevarrians were far from finished. With their fleet faltering, Zarn's cold, vengeful voice rang out through the Javoran. "Prepare for emergency maneuvers. We will not be beaten by these primitives." He turned to Drell, his expression fierce. "Their arrogance has led them to believe they can defeat us with tricks and cheap technology. We'll show them the true might of the Nevarrians." As the Nevarrian fleet regrouped, preparing for their next counteroffensive, the stakes of the battle were clearer than ever. This wasn't just a fight for survival. It was a fight for the future of the solar system, and humanity wasn't about to lose. The war had only just begun,